This is La Perouse today, 1983, a unique suburb of Sydney clustered on the northern headland of Botany Bay. It's a patchwork of roads, houses, natural beauty, industry, history and people. It looks peaceful and well established, but of course it wasn't always like this. Before European settlers arrived, the peninsula was a tree-covered point that formed the entrance to a beautiful natural harbour where Aboriginal tribes could fish in protected waters. Then one eventful day in 1788, a French naval vessel, the Astrolabe, sailed into the harbour for repairs and water. To their surprise, Captain Phillip of the British Navy had landed 8 days earlier and begun a British colony, following after Captain Cook, who had claimed the country for England 18 years earlier. The captain of that French ship was Jean-Francois Galloup de La Perouse, and he decided, with the consent of Captain Phillip, to stay and repair his damaged boats and recover before the long journey back to Europe. The crew began to live in the area, establishing gardens, and some died and were buried on the point. But La Perouse gave his name to the area. Mrs. Muriel Stewart has lived in La Perouse for over 45 years, yet the locals still call her a newcomer. She's retired now, but she can still remember what La Perouse was like when she first came to live here.
It was all wild and bush. It was just a track. From the trams used to go around, old trams, and they used to go, there was an old school down there, and the tram used to come past the school. And this was all, there was nothing here. They gave them all the timber, and they had to build themselves. It was all mud. It was terrible when we first came up here, because we just went in and applied for block ground. We didn't know where it was or anything else. There was nothing here when we first came. All the people living down the Happy Valley when we first came.
In those days, La Perouse seemed a long way from Sydney. There were a few brick houses in the area, but mostly there were wooden shacks and small farms that produced just enough food for themselves. There were some wooden cabins along the beach and an Aboriginal settlement nearby. The only transport to and from La Perouse, apart from horses, was a tram service that ran 3 times a day.
We got the trams from the city out to La Perouse. That was our only way of getting into the city when we went.
Mrs. Scroggy and her daughter, Mrs. Robb, have lived in La Perouse for over 50 years and have worked and raised their families there.
There's a few people had sulkies out here though, too, didn't they? They had their own transport, that way. They had sulkies with horses. It was beautiful.
Right in Happy Valley, as you're going up to the golf links. That used to be what they call Happy Valley. It was nothing but shacks and that in those days, but they made them comfortable. And they used to make their own wirelesses, you know, crystal wirelesses and things like that. But apart from it all, I mean, we had nothing, but we had happiness, you know. See, a lot of people lost their homes in the Depression through the banks, and they built their shacks and everything up there. But gee, they were a happy crowd. Hill 60. Oh, that was down here. At the, pardon me for pointing, at the back of the school. That's over that way. That was Hill 60.
What was that? Oh, over on Hill 60 there, mate, there was quite a few shacks in those days.
George Cann has been a resident of La Perouse for 55 years, and he remembers many changes in the area.
Because the hill's not as tall as it used to be, because they had the sand miners in there perhaps in the early 60s, and they left a great big hole in the middle of the hill. And today, as you can see, well, there's no shacks. That was all cleared out when the miners came in. Or on the I'm George Cann Jr. I was born out in Newtown area and come to live at La Perouse. My parents lived out here in those particular days, and I come out here to live like just a few days after I was born. I was born in 1927, and I've lived in the area ever since. I went to La Perouse school. Never a great scholar by any means, but managed to get through La Perouse school, and I have in front of me now a photo of my dad, who came to actually live in the district at the age of about 13 years of age. About 1910, Dad lived in the area, and because he did travel around from show to show at different times. And over here, my old mum, who was also in the snake business. We have a fantastic photo of her here now, and she was tied up in the show business with reptiles the same as my dad. This is how the brother and myself have become interested and still keep on the snake shows today.
George and his brother John have kept up the family tradition and maintain a large collection of reptiles and animals in their backyards today. The neighbours don't seem to mind, and the Canns still amaze visitors to their Sunday afternoon snake shows, where their father did years ago up on the headland near the tower.
A bit of respect for their dad. We loved their father and mum, and I think it's a bit of a service to the community as to what we do with the snake shows.
Well, La Perouse was really swinging of a Sunday afternoon. That was the swinging place, La Perouse. I mean, the trams were lined right around the loop. Mr. Cann would be there, that's George's father, with the snakes. And then from there down, it was nothing but entertainment. It was all entertainment of a Sunday afternoon. We had Donkey Bill with his donkey rides. He came out here in the Depression, you see. We used to call him Donkey Bill. Somebody else would have camel rides. Oh, there was that much entertainment. There was sword play, you know, those men that plays the swords. And
there was the coal mud, and we had the bridge down there, and they used to go across to Kernell.
Oh, the ferries with Kernell. Yeah, well, anybody that, oh yeah, we had men escaping from straight jackets, and
yeah,
it was really entertainment of a Sunday afternoon. It was great down there of a Sunday afternoon when we were young, you know.
Tried to do a lot of things down. In fact, the football club first started, well, I used to go down there and take the kids who were playing, you know, we tried to get it going with old Mr. Longbottom. He's dead now, George.
Was beautiful then. It was a gorgeous bay. I mean, the fish, we used to go down and help the men pull the fish in of a day, the mullet. 3 times a day they took out the nets, and 3 days a day they pulled them in 3 times, and you could not get on that beach for fish. when we were kids. You couldn't get on the, honestly, there was thousands of mullet jumping all over the place. They're lucky if they get pulled in two now.
Unfortunately, those golden days weren't to last forever. For some time, La Perouse area had been looked on as a kind of dumping ground for things that Sydney found were a problem.
It's over on Bunurong roadside. They have the old Pioneer Cemetery, which, like a lot of people may not realise, but Botany Cemetery started out here many years ago when they were going to start to build Central Railway Station, which where there used to be the original Sydney Cemetery, and then they transferred them out to Botany, this side here. And a lot of those, they brought the headstones out, and today they have what they call a Pioneer Cemetery from those old headstones from the early days.
Long Bay Jail was established in 1909 to remove another of Sydney's social problems. And the oil refinery was established after the Second World War, despite the complaints of the local residents.
It was sort of a blot on the landscape, see, a lot of jealousy too, because you grow up in an area of bushland and you run around like wild Indians and anywhere you like, and then all of a sudden all these machines come in and they've taken all the area, and you think they can't do that. I think there was about 2,000 of us lived in the area at that time when they started it, and I think 2,000 signatures went in to try to stop it. But there was too much money involved with it, and there was no hope in the world. There's not enough fight, not enough muscle out here.
We used to get the oil splashes years ago, but occasionally you get the winds there and a bit of oil splashes, but we don't seem to get it today. Old Bunurong's closed down, so we don't get any smoke like in the earlier days. That was used to get quite a bit of smoke coming out over this way. But we don't get anything like that today. I worked on the construction there myself for a little while back in those days, but I think the whole place just looks actually just about closed down today.
It didn't cause as much worry as Bunurong Power Station did when we were younger, because that's when we used to get the soot from the Bunurong Power Station. But that sort of died away, didn't it,
Yes,
Mum?
it did.
You know, that died away, that soot. But years ago, it was bad. If the wind ever came across this way, you'd be just covered in soot. Everything would be covered in soot, you know.
The effects of the refinery and the power station on the environment can never be ignored. But they did provide jobs for people when they needed them, and that helped the area to grow. The Newport Botany Development is another industrial project that has been recently established. We are yet to see what impact it has on the environment, but studies are being carried out and perhaps we've learned from our mistakes. Although some people still use La Perouse for dumping the things that they no longer want, others are beginning to treasure and preserve many of the historical buildings on the peninsula for generations, like Yarra Bay House and the Salvation Army Home for women and children. And of course there's the monument to La Perouse himself, the man who gave his name to the area. And the old tower on the headland that used to be the home of the Can family in the 30s. And of course Bear Island. It wasn't always connected to the headland by the bridge. After being a military establishment and an old soldier's home, it is now a national monument, and visitors to La Perouse can walk the corridors and examine the old gun installations, or visit the museum thanks to the Parks and Wildlife Service. But more than just buildings and the environment, it's people that make La Perouse what it is.
Oh yes, I had some very good friends out here, and then we got some, and in with some other people. I got in with some people over at, she used to come out here, a lady, to try and do things down on the reserve, you know, kids. And we got together, and we got together with some other people up at Eastwood, and then we formed an Aboriginal Women's Association out here. But
Mrs. Stewart was recently awarded the Order of Australia in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for her work in the Aboriginal community.
I didn't know anything about it till I got the letter. It's an OAM. I went in on last Thursday. Last Thursday, I think. I'm on the 28th, I received it. And I was very nervous. I never slept all night Wednesday night. I was a bit frightened. I was frightened. I've been on the jury a couple of times too, you know, years ago, and that frightened me, but it was a good experience.
I'll be 82 in November. Not yet.
Aren't you?
I've got a few months to go. Give me a break.
Sorry.
It's people like Muriel, George, Dot and Mrs. Scroggy who have made La Perouse what it is today. But what of the future? What do kids today feel about living in La Perouse? This is Belinda Cann and her friend Peter Brown.
I like living here because there's lots of things to do. There's lots of things around here you can play. There's the holiday centre, you can go do all activities and go places, excursions and that. I like around here because there's a beach close, the beaches are closed, and there's shops. And that's probably because the other places around haven't got as much things to do than like here. I like La Perouse because there's lots of bush and there's not many big buildings, and there's 2 shops, and there's one down at La Perouse, and there's a beach where you can go sailing, and there's horses around here, and you can just take a boat ride and you can just go across the beach. There's Cornell, and there's lots of things to do. You can go down the bush and you can make cubbies, and if I go to any other place I won't know the friends there because I only know friends here. Well, sometimes you go down the beach and all the water's all dirty and you can't swim in there. There's all oil and seaweed everywhere and you can't swim in it, it's all dirty. And people say there's not many shops around the place. They complain about not many shops. And down the Chinese gardens, it used to be Chinese gardens, but they changed it to across the road. And there's lots of horses there, and they were going to turn it into a bus department, but they didn't. Don't know why, they just didn't. And there's the cemetery and the oil refinery and the beach. We've got snakes and lizards. I feed the lizards and some of them bite. I don't like snakes and that. I've got a snake of my own. His name's Patchy, and Peter's got one in there too. His name's Simon. We go in the tortoise ponds. We get the tortoises and play with them. And I gave a tortoise to Peter, and she's got all her tank filled up. And we've got dogs, and we've got a goat, and chickens, and pheasant, lizards, and tortoises.
So La Perouse is still a pretty special place for kids to grow up. George Cann sums it all up perfectly.
Do I like living here? Because I was born here, I was reared here, married and lived here. They'll probably bury me over in the cemetery at the back of here.
beachless cliffs of Botany Bay, birthplace of modern Australia. These are the rugged bastions that Captain Arthur Phillip saw on that morning in 1788 when the first fleet carrying settlers and convicts from England sailed into the bay Cook discovered 18 years before. Playing along that foreshore are the children of yesterday and of today. They are a part, a small part it is true, but a part, nevertheless, of the modern Australian